To discuss the real issues affecting Australia and New Zealand, this is Trad Tasman Talk, jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and the Mr. Berry Show. Now here are Tim Wilms and Stephen Berry, live from Melbourne.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Trad Tasman Talk for another week on this Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. I'm Tim Wilms, editor-in-chief of the Unshackled. It is 6 p.m. here in Melbourne, which, well, it's just ticked over 6. There's been a further relaxation of restrictions, which we'll get into in a moment.
Oh, wow, because I'm Stephen Berry, also in Melbourne. I thought I had so many exciting things to talk about already. 20,000 views for the Mr. Berry show. I have a haircut. Don't think I'll need another one this year. And now there's more restrictions. What more can I do now, Tim?
Well, you can go outside of your home now without a face mask. So you can go for a walk in the park or go down to the beach without the fear that if you don't have a face mask on, that Victoria Police are going to strangle and tackle you to the ground.
Wow, I might actually do that after this.
But you still have to wear them in indoor settings. Which includes pubs and restaurants when you go in, but you can take the mask off when you sit down at the table. So it's really important to wear the mask.
You have to put it back on.
Sorry?
When you go to the toilet, you have to put it back on.
Yes. When you get up out of your seat,
you wash your hands afterwards, because then you have to take it off before you eat.
Yes. So sitting down at a table at a pub and restaurant without a mask, that's perfectly safe. But as soon as you get up to go to the toilet or pay, you've got to put it on. It's super dangerous. There's also, I think, at the moment, no vertical consumption of alcohol. Drinking standing up is really dangerous.
Is that all the freedoms that Dictator Dan has granted to our grateful residents of Victoria?
Well, you can now enjoy indoor retail, which, given that the wild weather that we've had today, one can only conclude that the gods having unleashing one final act of vengeance on Victoria with the wild winds we had today. Luckily, outdoor retail is no more tonight, so you can go to Kmart or Harvey Norman right now. I'm sure, because it's 6 p.m. news time here in Melbourne, all the news outlets, they've got all their correspondents all around Kmart's all around Melbourne, ready for people to stampede in.
Oh, great. And so we can watch them all so excited and grateful at Dictator Dan for allowing them to go to Kmart.
Yes, but what is it? There was confusion over this. So for the moment, the unwashed, unvaxxed, they can still go to Kmart. But when, Victoria reaches the next milestone, 90% double vaxxed over 12, then Kmart is too dangerous for the unvaxxed, unwashed to enjoy. They have to just do click and collect.
Oh, wow. So actually, we're more vulnerable than we have been in several months.
What do you mean?
Well, are the single vaxxed allowed into Kmart now, and then suddenly they'll cut that off, and it's double vaxxed only?
Yes. So there's a grace period until we reach the 90% target that I just mentioned by what's the tentative date? November 24th.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Oh, not a lot has made sense with Victoria's pandemic response. Melbourne's had the longest lockdown in the world. There's been what is it? It's had the strictest, some of the strictest pandemic laws, yet the worst results, the most deaths, most cases in total.
We're still doing over 2,000 cases per day, and Dan's like, "Oh, that's fine now. We've just decided to live with it." Though that you shouldn't relax just yet, because there's some pretty nasty stuff waiting in the legislature, which will easily pass the lower house. And it looks
it already
like
has passed the lower house.
It's passed the lower house, and it looks like he's already negotiated with the crossbench, because it's well, why would he bother going to all this effort of creating these totalitarian new laws for a new lockdown if he hadn't already sealed the deal before it went to the upper house?
What he's trying to pass, so we've been living under the past 18 months the state of emergency provision under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, which Daniel Andrews was the health minister at the time, who introduced it to the Victorian Parliament and passed it back then. There's a history lesson for you. But the state of emergency provision, it could last a maximum of 6 months. So it was extended thanks to the Three Stooges, as we call them, the Reason Party's Fiona Patten, the Greens leader Samantha Ratnam, and Andy Menick of the Animal Justice Party. They got the first 6 months extension, 3 for Dan back in September, and then in March this year, another 9 months extension. So their condition of support for the second extension was that there'd be permanent pandemic laws, which is what this Public Health and Wellbeing Amendment Pandemic Management Bill 2021, because it's to be in place for the next pandemic, or if there's some sort of super variant which hasn't been found anywhere in the world, or something. It's interesting that it doesn't
have to be found in Victoria. If it exists somewhere in the world, that will be enough for Dictator Dan to bring in these new emergency powers. And all the New Zealanders who are going, "Oh, the X Party, they're not libertarian enough." Well, at least they're not the bloody Reason Party, who was meant to be, really pure. And now they've supported this going through the upper house multiple times.
Well, the Reason Party, they were formerly the Sex Party. So Fiona Patten, her pet causes since she got elected to Parliament in 2014 was enacting 150-meter exclusion zones outside abortion clinics in Victoria. Also helping to set up the first heroin injecting room in North Richmond. And she's also proposing, this is how much of a libertarian she is, the Racial and Religious Tolerance Amendment Act, which would expand the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act to include sex, sexual preference, gender identity, disability, and HIV status. That's still before the Parliament there, but she was the one who introduced it, and Dan and his government think that less free speech is a great idea.
Well, good thing she's up for election in 2022 then, so you can hopefully boot her out of the upper house.
And the Animal Justice Party, like as the name suggests, they campaign for the rights of animals, but obviously there has not been, in our opinions, too much concern from them for the rights of humans in Victoria over the past.
They hate humans.
Well, I assume that the Animal Justice Party, they'll be speaking out against Dr. Fauci's NIH funding the torture and murder of puppies in the name of science.
And what have they said about the torture of bats in Wuhan?
Well, I'm not aware of
probably
if
nothing.
they've said anything.
Yeah, definitely nothing.
So let's have a look at some of the more contentious bits of the of the pandemic management amendment, to put it mildly. So what is it? This is one of the sections here, that a pandemic order may apply to differentiate between or vary its applications to persons or classes of persons identified by one or more of the following: their presence in a pandemic management area or a particular location in a pandemic management area, their participation or presence at an event. Maybe like, say, an anti-government protest.
Yeah.
An activity that they have undertaken or are undertaking, such as maybe dissenting against the government, their characteristics, attributes, or circumstances. So attribute means that, well, it can apply to anything under any attribute under the Equal Opportunity Act 2010, which basically means that they can make pandemic orders overriding protections in the Equal Opportunity Act.
And I mean, it's not just Victoria that's going down this path as well. Western Australia has got some horrific new laws. I believe it's passed now under the Iron Ore Amendment Act, in which there's no right of appeal against rulings made by the government. The health minister and the premier are now immune from civil and criminal charges over what may be the impact of that new law. And there's no freedom of information. Residents cannot demand information about what the government is doing under relation to the iron ore, and people are just lapping that up. 53 out of 59 seats in their previous election. They love being isolated. They love being treated like slaves. And I don't want to do the new immigrant like Ricardo Menendez March in New Zealand, who comes over to this wonderful country and goes, oh, look at all the oppression. But seriously, I'm looking at the fascist states of Australia here. And I actually want to live in Australia for the rest of my life and enjoy living in an advanced Western country. And I'm absolutely horrified by the steps that so many of these states are taking to violate individual liberty and really advance totalitarianism in Australia.
Well, as if New Zealand has been a libertarian paradise throughout the.
It hasn't, but it is third freest country in the world, which is really horrifying if you're a New Zealander going to Australia.
That's if you go by one of these freedom indexes put together by
freedom.
Think tanks. But if you're still in Auckland, you'd still be in lockdown until the target that Jacinta has set to when the Auckland lockdown and wherever else has that's in lockdown because of cases. When New Zealand gets to 90% double vax, then you go to this traffic light system, which restrictions vary based on the undefined number of cases. So it's basically you can be in, you're just in this restrictions loop with traffic lights.
We don't even know how terrible it's going to be because nobody understands it. Initially, I thought it was 90% of the DHBs that you live under, but no, it's actually 90% of all 20 DHBs in New Zealand before you can go out of level 1 to 4, go into this traffic light system. The traffic light system, of course, references if you're in orange, then you may experience some restrictions such as you used to experience on level 2. So it abolishes 1 to 4 and then relies on 1 to 3. Nobody knows how it works, so you don't even know how oppressed you are until you're oppressed. So like Jacinda Ardern goes, you'll know you're oppressed when you see it.
Colin here in the chatter says, I assume he's in Melbourne. I'm home alone wearing 15 face masks. Well, one of the things you'll really be horrified from, and will probably put on, well, a whole box of 50 masks on, is because part of the 90% double dosed Victorian threshold, that's when pretty much all the restrictions, gathering limits, density quotas end, but there'll still be the lockout of the unvaccinated. But it also means that masks will only be required in high risk indoor settings like hospitals, public transport, and aged care facilities. So I'm not sure how you're going to cope with that. You've clearly been adopting the double, triple, quadruple masking. Have you made sure you've had? Sorry?
Are they all applied across his face, or is he taking extra cautions?
I assume the 15 masks are over his face. That's what he just said. He says, "I can barely breathe, but I'm not inhaling an element associated with carbon dioxide." Yes, like breathing like a normal human being is definitely not okay anymore.
I might give that a go, actually, because well, as an essential worker, I get unlimited face masks, and maybe I'll give that a go one day.
Just an experiment, just to see how little you can breathe.
Yeah, I struggle walking up the steps. Everyone takes a piss out of me for breathing hard after I walk up 3 flights of steps.
Now, despite what is it in the UK, they lifted their mask mandate on their Freedom Day. Despite all these restrictions to keep COVID at bay, and obviously the vaccine rollout, there's a new disease or that is plaguing in the UK, the super cold. Thousands across the UK come with the worst cold ever. So
this isn't Delta Plus, is it?
No, this is, it's not picked up by PCR tests.
Oh, right, that's good, because I'm on a campaign to change the name of Delta Plus to Delta Echo. I think that's
Delta
Plus.
There's no evidence, zero evidence, I should say, that it's any more deadly or evades the vaccines.
Oh, careful now, show's going to get fact checked.
But so the symptoms reported symptoms of super cold include sandpaper throat, head and body aches, runny nose, and fatigue, sometimes lasting for weeks.
That's how I feel normally without the runny nose.
How is this super cold like running all over the place, given that everybody's been in the UK for a lot of the past 18 months staying at home, masking, double masks, triple masks? It could be just that all this isolation makes people's immune system weaker to the normal cold. So that's why it feels like there's this super cold.
Because they probably haven't had a flu vaccination. I got one earlier this year, which was available before the COVID vaccinations were. But was there a reference to Western Australia in the article you just brought up?
I don't think so. But there is what we have had in Victoria earlier this year, and also in New Zealand, outbreaks of RSV, a respiratory virus, which is caused by people's immune system becoming weaker due to things like social distancing and masks. I think a woman in New Zealand, she in her 50s, she died from RSV.
There's also the unseen diseases, which we would have seen were it not for shutting down everything for COVID-19. We used to have 9 cases of breast cancer diagnosed every day in New Zealand. That doesn't happen anymore because we're not getting women through mammograms like we used to before. So, as the lockdown restrictions drop, we're going to see an acceleration in breast cancer cases, cervical cancer, and just about anything off the list now, because we're not looking for it anymore.
Well, we had on, it was called Dump Day Thursday yesterday in Victoria. 211 reports were dumped on the Parliament of Victoria, and one of them included a child protection report that said that 2 children had died because COVID restrictions altered child protection involvement, this is just abhorrent. So the Commission for Children and Young People focused on the high number of children who died while known to child protection services. It includes details of deaths to at-risk children during the pandemic. There were known and significant risk factors at play. She said when emergency COVID health restrictions were reduced last year, all face-to-face services were effectively withdrawn, and services each on their own decided to withdraw direct contact with the family, and in both cases without talking to each other and realizing that they were all doing that. I mean, this is just abhorrent.
Well, if you think that's abhorrent, in New Zealand, Rangan Tamariki has decided not to do any more child uplifts because all the kids getting uplifted from their mothers were Māori. And so they're blaming systemic racism for kids in very dangerous living circumstances getting uplifted rather than the fact that their parents are absolute scum and losers. So at least, on the upside, this terrible thing that's happened with the 2 kids dying may not be repeated as we reduce restrictions, but in New Zealand, it's actually going to become the norm.
Yeah, well, Dan promises that we're not turning back. We're opening this place up. No more lockdowns.
But just in case, give me all these new powers.
Yeah, exactly. And we've heard a lot of legal professionals raise grave concerns about the new pandemic laws. This was in the Age newspaper today, signed by a number
of... Well, if the
of
Age is worried, then you've got a problem, don't you?
High-profile QCs there, and we also should focus on the proposed pandemic punishments here, which there's a new offence of aggravated offence of failure to comply with pandemic order direction or other requirement, which includes up to 500 penalty units for an individual, which is just over $90,000, and 2 years imprisonment. Now, a lot of people have said, well, hypothetically, you could be jailed for 2 years for not wearing a mask. Now, that's clearly not going to happen. I assume that the penalty for not wearing a mask now, which is $200, will be the same after these new pandemic laws are passed.
But the potential's there. The potential's there, and you should never give the government
exactly. Like it doesn't matter if they're not going to abuse this power to their maximum capacity, but the fact that it's there and can be utilized, like nobody knew what the Public Health and Wellbeing Act could do to our lives when it was passed 13 years ago.
Nobody expected that we would see small protests from people who were unable to work because a vax mandate was applied within a matter of days, and police would be marching in with horses and bloody pepper spray and rubber bullets. I don't think even Dan Andrews was imagining the day when he would get to apply those to the residents of Victoria.
Maybe he was dreaming of the day, potentially. When I watched the Netflix series this year, How to Be a Tyrant, it seemed to me like it was more like an instruction manual for our current political leaders. And I think with these new laws that Dan is wanting to star in season 2 of How to Be a Tyrant, and this trailer has just launched.
If you want to rule, You first have to believe that you can. To truly show your love, you'll need to guide your flock with a firm hand. You too can create an enduring heaven on earth with you as its guiding light.
When you're living in a difficult time, there's an appeal to someone who says, I alone can fix it all.
If you want to make history, you'll need a message that stirs people's souls.
This is not about human rights.
Absolute rule is going to take a strong stomach.
Torture is a very good way to deter people from opposing you.
Toughness is good. The people respect you.
One of the most powerful tools is who controls the information.
True, the party decides what is true. There is a higher truth. That is the truth of power.
You still have some big challenges to overcome. Time to show how far you're willing to go to preserve your power.
And it's funny, but it's actually incredibly disturbingly close to reality.
Yes, that was one of the real Rukshan, another classic video mashup from him, which those type of videos is what how he first got viral before he moved on to covering street protests and also interviewing. He featured an interview this week with the parliamentarians in the parliament in exile because they refused to hand over their vaccination status. David Limbrick, Tim Coyce of the Liberal Democrats, and independent Catherine Cummings. They were operating at the basement of a nightclub in Melbourne.
Yeah, and so they decided that they've all been double vaxxed as well, just as I have, but they opposed the vax mandate and said they're not going to go into Parliament buildings under those terms. Unfortunately, they did put a thing onto the floor requiring another public inquiry into the absolute disgraceful abuse of human rights that is happening under Dan Andrews' government. But this meant that they themselves could not go in to vote for it, so the vote failed. Their supporters have said, look, you made your point, very good point made, please go back in and hold these scum accountable.
Well, part of the reason that the exclusion of them got through the parliament so easily is that the state Liberal opposition supported it, which meant one of their own MPs, Neil Angus, can't attend parliament because he is not vaccinated at all. So they're saying that this is an appalling piece of legislation. Liberal leader Matthew Guy has given an ironclad guarantee that if he wins the next state election, he'll tear them up. But he and his Liberals voted to exclude MPs that wouldn't disclose their vaccine status. So they.
And when people are celebrating in the streets in 2022, thanking Dan Andrews for granting them all these freedoms back, which apparently come from the government, and planning to re-elect Dan Andrews' Labor government, we need to get every bloody voter possible away from this absolute empty shell of what used to be a Liberal Party and supporting the Liberal Democrats Party, because this opposition is not fit for function. They're useless. They've been absolutely ineffectual for years. Get rid of the useless bastards and start voting for some Liberal Democrats candidates in 2022.
Well, the latest polls still have a Labor ahead in Victoria on primary votes, and Daniel Andrews still is preferred premier, though Matthew Guy, returning as leader, has narrowed the gap, though Dan would still win an election amazingly if it was held tomorrow. We are seeing
give up on the Liberals. Give up on them. They've had 4 years to put something together that looks like an alternative that'll protect our liberties and human rights, and they have absolutely failed almost every step of the way. And now that they're completely helpless, they sound like a dying cat underneath the jackboot of the Animal Rights Party's senator. So stuff the Liberals. They don't deserve your support. If they got your support, they would waste it. Start looking for the Liberal Democrats now.
Well, we obviously we have like Dan now wanting to all of a sudden move on from the pandemic and hoping that the voters eventually forget the world's longest lockdown. And
they love it. They love it.
Love what?
They love being locked down, and they're gonna celebrate not being locked down and thank Dan for their freedoms, and then forget all about it next year's election.
Yeah, I mean
the trend is for lockdown governments to be re-elected. It's overwhelming trend. I've done the research. I've done the numbers. You wouldn't believe how popular lockdown is worldwide. So don't hope that they're going to forget. They're going to remember, and they're going to remember by voting more Labor.
That could also be a possibility. But the reason why Dan, all of a sudden, after chasing COVID-0 for 18 months, has opened the state with, close to 2,000 cases per day is because Victorians were sick of the lockdowns. It was because of the closing of the gaps in the polls that he's now opening up and saying we can look forward to an optimistic 2022. And tomorrow is going to be the last daily COVID briefing. So there'll be no more Daily Dan or Martin Foley or with the train guy, Jerome Weimar. And there'll also be no more questions like this at press conferences about what is the vax status of the people who are recorded every day dying with COVID.
Yeah, so those data are available, but we're not going to be reporting on that.
Wow.
So that was a Deputy Chief Health Officer, Ben Cowie, yesterday when 25 Victorians died with COVID. And he said, we know how many of the 25, we know their vaccination status, but we're not going to tell you.
So maybe this is advantageous anyway. People will stop watching for these numbers and just go spend some money.
Well, there's just going to be the morning tweet, and then there'll be a press release later in the day. If there's like some significant announcement, say that, we're going to start rolling out boosters or immunizing children, or we've reached the 90%, then there'll be a press conference, which is sort of the way how things work in New South Wales now, where despite being open for 3 weeks, cases are still 200 to 300 per day, so they've stayed in that downward area there. But we also had Martin Foley, the health minister, earlier this week say that one of the recorded deaths with COVID was a 20-year-old girl who died in tragic circumstances unrelated to COVID, but because she was COVID positive at the time, it was recorded with COVID. He made it sort of sound like maybe she died in a freak traffic accident or something, which, because there's so much COVID around now with all these thousands of cases per day, like how many people who are going to die of all different causes, like they're going to perform an autopsy afterwards and find, oh yeah, COVID.
Probably all the people who are going to die of breast cancer because there hasn't been any monitoring for it for the last 18 months.
Well, they're not included in the daily death count. I doubt we're going to go through a process of just in a morning tweet publishing all the deaths in Victoria and what they died with.
No, that wouldn't be very useful anyway.
Yeah, but you get my point. Like, say two people could die in a horrific car accident, One didn't have COVID, so there is not, it's not a significant news item, their tragic death, but it's recorded in the daily COVID numbers the other person who hypothetically died in a tragic car accident, but they were found to have COVID in their system. You get my point.
Yeah. Point taken.
But the other, what is that, COVID news outside of Victoria is that the TGA and the Vaccine Advisory Body, ATAGI, approved booster shots for everyone over 18 years old. Are you going to voluntarily get a booster?
Yeah, hell yeah. Hopefully it's an AstraZeneca one.
Well, we've got still on order the 51 million doses of Novavax, the vaccine that's been in the works for ages, yet hasn't arrived yet. It's always Novavax is coming, which this vaccine, I believe, actually has the live virus in it. So it's more like a flu vaccine.
Okay, well, yeah, of course I'm going to take vaccines when they're available, just like I do for the flu vaccine every year. But I'm still going to be just as furious if they try to mandate these. And they probably will.
And I think that's why Dan wants to keep the vaccinated economy throughout 2022, the lockout, so he can mandate the boosters as well. He's already spoken about that vaccine passports will be updated to show your booster like they are in Israel.
Oh, prick. Maybe I won't get it then. See, I'll have to anyway because I'll lose my job and my means of survival, which is horrible.
Well, we've actually heard reports today that Dom Perrottet in New South Wales is looking at backflipping on the promise to lift the vaccine passports on December 1. Instead wanting to pursue a target of 95% double vaxxed over 12 before lifting vaccine passports.
Oh, that's interesting, because in New Zealand, Judith Collins is saying we should abolish the vaccine passports once we have vaccination over 90%, and she's getting bollocked by the government for saying that doesn't make any sense, because then how do you know we're over 90%? But yeah, I think that should happen. The government should not be so slow to withdraw all these extra powers it's given itself. It should probably be something that we start advocating for very loudly very soon, because how else are we going to grab back some of these powers which have been stripped from us over the last 18 months?
Now, we're told that vaccine passports or vaccine ID is good, but voter ID is very, very bad. It's racist voter suppression. And this was the reaction when the Morrison government, they have proposed to introduce voter ID laws. This is Josh Butler, the hipster political editor of the New Daily, which is funded by union super funds. So his article said these laws have been slammed as Trumpian by parliamentary opponents. This is a thought bubble straight out of the Donald Trump playbook, claimed opposition leader Anthony Albanese.
Well, that's just nonsense. The Donald Trump playbook is being applied by the vax mandate advocates who are dividing us. I've never seen Australia or any country so divided. This is Trumpian, not this bloody rhetoric coming out of idiots like Anthony Albanese, who really should get named in the same way ScoMo does.
So Albanese, he said that the government is trying to actively trying to weaken democracy. This will drive people apart, pitting Australians against each other. What? As if that hasn't happened already.
Well, you already have to compulsory. You have to vote by law. How more less democratic could the system bloody get? How can you add from my previous tenants where I live? I'm still getting the mail from the government saying you didn't vote. Here's your fine. When are you going to pay your fine?
Which it goes to my point. How can a voter ID laws suppress voting in a country where voting is compulsory? And there's like on election. I'm not sure if you voted in an Australian polling booth, but you don't have to wait for hours to cast your vote. I mean, it's over in about 15 minutes, and yet as of at the moment, you don't have to show ID. You just have to state your name, confirm your address, and they mark you off a phone book of the electoral roll. So every person who like marks you off for voting has their own phone book of the electoral roll. So they print these, or they're probably printing. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these phone books there, and then they manually reconcile to check that everyone's voted, nobody's voted twice, because they ask you, have you voted before? Like, there's no, as I've just described, there's no
3 weeks for the results because they're all sitting in a room trying to put these huge books together to make sure it all lines up.
Even though you have to present ID to open up a bank account, collect a parcel from the post office, and now you have to show vaccine ID to enter a lot of places. Nothing
like a
wrong,
polling station.
nothing racist about that. But if it's to show who you are on the electoral roll, so there's no electoral fraud, that's apparently racist.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no issue with that. It's just trying to make the bloody system slightly more efficient, isn't it?
But this will be this hypothetical. I wonder how the progressive left would react to this. Say if Dan Andrews mandates with his new pandemic management laws that only the vaccinated can vote in person at the 2022 state election. They have to show vaccine ID to enter a polling booth. How are they going to be okay with that? Because it's a vaccine ID, not a voter ID, and the unvaccinated, they're only allowed to do mail-in ballots.
Well, I've seen the graffiti going up on the power poles for the next protest throughout Melbourne. These are from groups who call themselves pro-vax, pro-union, and anti-fascist. I don't even need to talk about this anymore. This is the level that the postmodern neo-Marxist left are at now, in which they are attacking those who don't want to be forced to put a substance into their body as the fascists.
And now on November 1, which is the next, it's the first national milestone, because it's when Victoria, New South Wales, and the ICT become one free travel zone, which includes international travel inbound and outbound for the fully vaccinated without quarantine. The unvaccinated, they'll still have to go to in Victoria, they'll start to go to the new quarantine camp at Mickleham, though New Zealand is in another sign that there's still no real exit strategy. New Zealanders still have to go to what you call MIQ.
Oh, and this is the complete opposite, because we've got a hotel in Wellington with one occupant and 100 empty rooms for an entire week, while 30,000 people for some reason want to go to New Zealand. And when the government says, okay, we're opening up MIQ for your applications, they all sit at their computer and try to get in really, really quickly. But the capacity is just not there. There's only a couple of thousand. You've got 30,000 people wanting to come home to their own country. If you hadn't lived under this Labor government for 4 years, you would just be smacking yourself over the head with a hammer, trying to work out how could they be so incompetent. And unfortunately, generally, it's their incompetence which protects us from everything else they want to do to us.
And it doesn't matter if you're unvaccinated or double vaccinated. If you come back to New Zealand, you still end up in MIQ. In fact, if you're positive, they put you in MIQ.
Yeah, there has been a scandal in the last few days I've just heard about, where apparently some MIQ rooms have had methamphetamine addicts in them smoking their pee for 2 weeks. So now they can't use the MIQ room for somebody else because it's got to be stripped to stop it being poisonous from methamphetamine, which is absolutely ridiculous anyway. You could just use the room. Not that I'm an expert on that, but it's not that damaging.
Has there been any talk about eventually ending MIQ, at least moving to hotel quarantine?
Yeah, and there has been talk to moving to quarantining in your own home. As the vaccination rates go up, they're looking at 5-day quarantines now instead of 14-day quarantines, which doesn't make any sense to me, because despite the fact that we're all getting vaccinated, it doesn't change the fact that the virus can stay dormant in your body for 14 days. So they're just clutching at bloody statistics and numbers, and it's an absolute mess, just like the traffic light system.
Now, Jacinta Ardern, she infamously violated social distancing for a selfie during the election campaign last year. This time during a COVID press conference, she has violated social distancing against a sign language interpreter.
That keeps people safe, but actually brings back many of the things that have been missing in life.
Robertson, your personal preference for not giving financial support to businesses not using vax certificates, do you have some colleagues that need convincing, and is your aim really to make it as difficult as possible for them to keep operating?
No, it's not the colleagues I need to convince, but we do obviously have to make sure that our regime is robust.
Oh, that's hilarious. I mean, the deaf people in the background just drive me absolutely crazy, because they're making all these movements and these weird things with their mouths, and it's nothing against deaf people. It's a little off-putting when you're trying to write the actual message. I'm pretty sure deaf people can read, so why can't we just have subtitles?
Well,
I've got to have deaf speakers coming to my home after that.
There can be technical issues where subtitles can't be put on. It's standard in Australia when it's an emergency. They always have a sign language interpreter, and yes, some of their sign language is humorous. There was one sign language guy at Dan Andrews' press conference who was screenshotted doing this. To the camera, but there's never been an incident where a politician has collided with the sign language interpreter.
That's the first I've seen that. I'm sorry, that was quite hilarious.
Now, even though the New Zealand Labor government at the moment is most known for how much it's costing the country with its lockdowns, it has time to waste other money as well.
Oh yeah, and like we had the $785 million proposed cycle bridge to go parallel to the existing Auckland Harbour Bridge, which doesn't allow you to cycle on it. $785 million they were proposing to build on this thing. The people of Northcote Point, I mean, they must have the most schizophrenic living conditions there, because their homes are going to have compulsory purchase one day, and then next week it's off, and then next week it's back on. It's probably the only part in Auckland where house prices aren't going up, because nobody knows whether you're still going to be allowed to live there. So they cancelled the $785 million cycle bridge, and now we've got the tram from the CBD to Dominion Road to the airport. But so this was first come up with in 2016 in the Mount Roskill by-election, when Labor wanted to win the by-election. They kept on going when they eventually got elected in 2017. They had people pitching to be the guys who are going to build it. They had the New Zealand Super Fund going to invest super into it, right up until 2020, when their coalition partner, New Zealand First, just said, no, we're not doing this. Then they get re-elected in 2020. They've got a single party majority in the House. And Transport Minister Michael Wood now says, well, actually, we're going to look back into it again, but we're not going to look at any of the stuff that we spent 3 years looking at. We're just going to start it from scratch with another 6 months of consultation. The streets in Dominion Road, and especially in Mount Roskill along there, are absolutely empty, because how the hell do you plan a business based on there's a train track coming through here, now there's not, now there is. You just can't. Originally, this was going to cost $1.4 billion. Now it's up to $14 billion. And that's just one train track. We've also got the train track from Hamilton to Auckland City, though it doesn't actually fully reach there yet. You've got to get off onto a bus to get to your final destination. They want to turn that into a 200-something kilometre per hour bullet train, which would take 45 minutes to get from Hamilton to Auckland. Who the hell wants to get from Auckland to Hamilton that quickly? That's looking at $18 billion. And this is why I'm glad they're incompetent. Could you imagine what would happen if they could actually do any of the stuff they promised?
Well, part of the reason Dan got re-elected in 2018 is because he has delivered infrastructure projects, albeit with lots of cost blowouts. I mean, there's the train level crossing removal project, the Mordialloc freeway, connecting the Mornington Peninsula with Clarinda and the Dingley bypass will be completed by the end of the year. The Metro Rail Tunnel that will be, well, it's in the works. That'll be completed in 2025. There are a few projects which have been very slow and very expensive to get going, such as the Westgate Tunnel. Dan Andrews was at the Northeast Link project on Thursday, announcing how long the tunnel would be. That hasn't been built yet, and they'll acquire more property. And then there's his pie in the sky suburban rail loop, which will be completed in 30 years. So he has delivered some infrastructure projects, albeit cost blowouts, and yeah, he's got a few pie in the sky projects as well. Let's move on to.
Sounds like a monorail.
Oh, it's got two tracks, so it's a duo rail. Now let's move on to, well, let's have a sports update because the Australian A-League season is commencing next month, and this is how one of the players, Josh Cavallo, decided to launch his season with his team Adelaide United.
Hi everyone, it's Josh Cavallo here. I'm at my home here in Adelaide. There's something personal that I need to share with everyone. I'm a footballer and I'm gay. Growing up, I always felt the need to hide myself, because I was ashamed. And ashamed I'll never be able to do what I love and be gay. Hiding who I truly am to pursue a dream I always wished for as a kid. Through my coming out, I'm excited to open up, to show everyone the Josh Cavallo, to show the true Josh Cavallo. I'm Josh Cavallo, I'm a footballer, and I'm proud to be gay.
Wow, he's such a hero.
Why do we need to do this now? It's not even a big deal anymore.
Exactly.
All we should have gone is said, hi, I'm Josh. I want to play soccer and I want to fuck a man. That's all he needed to do. His co-players would probably have appreciated in the showers afterwards. That could have been it. Now everyone's going.
That's a bit too graphic, I think, for our audience. But yeah,
that's really,
that was just it.
my point. Why are we having a sookie bye? Oh, gay, I can't play soccer. It's a gay sport. Everybody pats their bums. We know you're all gay. Just move on.
Well, that was just an edited version of the video. There's a whole it goes for the full video goes for 2 minutes. This vomitous video, and basically, it's
I couldn't watch it. I got to the part where he went, ugh, and I just went, oh, go play soccer.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I'm more interested in. Like, he's 21 years old. He's in the Young Socceroos. Like, is he going to be like a big star and play in Europe and the Socceroos? I'm more interested in his performance on the pitch rather than his performance in the sheets.
Yeah, all the showers.
Now let's talk about an actual courageous sports star, which is Quinton Cock, who is a mixed-race South African cricketer, and the South African Cricket Board ordered all the players to take the knee for Black Lives Matter, and he refused because he wasn't going to be told what to do. What he needed to do to show that he wasn't a racist. But according to the ABC's ABC Breakfast sports reporter, Tony Armstrong, because he didn't kneel, it must have meant that he was a racist because, well, he was South African and that the country had apartheid. So therefore, that's the only conclusion that you can come to. And so Tony Armstrong, who, well, he himself is a failed AFL player. I mean, he played about 30 or 40 games in AFL, but he's made a name for himself in the ABC sports scene. So this was his after Quinton de Kock issued a statement saying, I've obviously Black Lives Matter to me, but I wasn't going to literally bend the knee because I was told to. This was Tony Armstrong's basically retracting the racist allegation against de Kock.
I wanted to ask you, because you were feeling understandably pretty emotional the other morning on this subject. Does that apology from him or statement go to what your concerns were?
I guess within the statement, he did say that if he had his time again, he would have taken the knee. I do understand how he would have felt pressure immediately to that he was having a mandate forced down upon him. It was only a couple of hours, I think, before the game that they were told that they were going to have to do that. But I think what you saw in me was the direct impact of what racism can do. And again, I was pretty strong, and I was probably wrongly a bit too strong. But that was a direct fight or flight response to seeing a perceived lack of support to something that means so very much to me and so very much to so many people. And my blood was boiling, and in that moment, all I saw with the information in front of me was someone not supporting something that is so powerful and so wide-reaching and so strong. That was, I guess, me a couple of days ago. And then, as you get more information, I understand.
So he basically said that he jumped to the conclusion, and that if you don't take the knee for Black Lives Matter, then you must be a racist.
Normally, when people apologise for not being bullied, my line is never apologise, never ever apologise to these people, because they see it as guilt and they taste blood and they'll just destroy you for it. But I'm glad to see that Quinton Cox's apology is actually turned into a happy story, because now these filthy neo-Marxist socialist bastards are on the back foot and apologising for their instinct to go for the throat if somebody doesn't instantly line up with their nasty genocidal dogma.
And I would never bend the knee to support this neo-Marxist Black Lives Matter movement, because that's what BLM is, not because I'm a racist, but because like I just said, it's a neo-Marxist movement. I don't need to bend a knee to prove that I'm not racist.
No, I don't even stand for the national anthem. I'm not going to stand for your collectivist group because I'm Stephen Berry. I'm just going to be myself, and I'm not going to express hate towards your nation or support towards your nation when a happy song comes on. And I'm certainly not going to bend a knee for the bloody nasty, vicious people who run that organisation.
Now, given that, well, Quentin de Kock, they were wanting to destroy his career because he refused to comply with a bend the knee mandate, I sort of thought to myself, Dan Andrews probably thinking, mandating the knee for Black Lives Matter, that's a good idea.
But I was also very happy to see that even though some other organisations, such as one of the Indian Premier League teams, who are almost just as quick to think about cutting off de Kock's contract there, the level-headed people in Australian cricket actually were already making plans to find a way to support de Kock through what was probably going to have to be more of a mercenary career in the future rather than an initial international cricket one.
And another actual courageous and stunning and brave sports star is Novak Djokovic. He is now in a standoff with Dan Andrews over the vaccine mandate. He's nicknamed Novak's Djokovic. Novak has said, I'm not going to disclose my vaccine status. The federal government has said we'll grant him a visa, but he'll have to go to Mickleham for 2 weeks. Dan has said so far that if everyone working at the ground has to be and watching the Australian Open has to be vaccinated, then so should the players. So we're in this standoff now. But also Novak Djokovic has natural immunity from the coronavirus, because remember, he got it last year when he was at that, shirtless party.
Oh, well, great. You shouldn't need one anyway. It's unfortunate that people who have the means to stand up to cancel culture are the ones who are worth millions of dollars and have already had large successful careers. And, if you stop them from doing what they do now, it doesn't really mean one nor the other because they're uncancelable. Good for them with the means to survive life after cancellation for doing it. It's just so unfortunate that there are millions of others of us who would like to do the same, and we just don't have the means to do it.
We are into overtime now, but just some other news that is worth touching on. Thomas Sewell and Jacob Hirschnett, who have been charged with armed robbery during a National Socialist Network camping trip at the Cathedral Ranges back in May. They faced a committal hearing this week. Thomas Sewell, he's been remanded in custody since the alleged armed robbery back in late May. Jacob Hirschnett has bail conditions where he's not allowed to post to social media nor associate with any National Socialist Network or European Australian Movement members. His bail conditions.
How do you define who they are?
Sorry?
Apparently everyone's a Nazi. Everyone the socialists don't like is a Nazi now. How are you going to define who is
Tom and Jacob, they are self-proclaimed neo-Nazis and followers of Adolf Hitler. So you should take them at their word. That's
well, in this case, yes.
Yeah. So this has been a online WebEx hearing, which this is a report by David Hiscock of XYZ, who is a National Socialist Network supporter himself. So obviously he's got some biases here. The prosecution actually wanted XYZ kicked out of the court session because of the articles that they've written about Tom. They only wanted like proper media in the courtroom. So this was one of David's report, which talks about how the witnesses were still amending their statements 5 months after that they'd been made. Here it is down here. At the start of yesterday's hearings, the prosecution complained that XYZ was following events, suggesting that they are concerned that an honest recounting of events will be given to the public in which allegations are not merely presented as facts. And yeah, so there's I haven't been watching it myself. Well, my internet was down today because of the storm, but luckily it came back up in time for this show. But yeah, XYZ were watching the WebEx virtual court hearing. So was Senator Slayer and Australian Meditations. They're going to be doing their own live stream summary at 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time tonight on the Senator Slayer YouTube channel. And also today we had former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian testifying before ICAC about her lobbying on behalf of her disgraced ex-boyfriend, secret ex-boyfriend, former Liberal MP Darryl Maguire, which a lot of phone taps were played between Gladys and Darryl, which obviously having their private conversations aired in it's not a court ICAC, it's just it's a star chamber basically. Like having their private conversations aired. There's actually one call when Darryl Maguire says they could actually be recording and listening to us now, and that was played in the ICAC today.
I think the public sympathy that came out when she resigned is going to very quickly evaporate. I don't think we should have much sympathy for her anyway, because all she has done is what Dictator Dan has done to Victoria. She's just been a bit more nice about it.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't a bigger cunt as Dan has been, and well, New South Wales, they've come out the other side in terms of COVID numbers, much better. But yeah, she resigned when ICAC revealed that they were investigating her, and listening to these phone taps, like Darryl Maguire, he's constantly nagging and badgering her, get more money for my electorate. And she's saying things like, I'll throw money at Wagga. Don't you worry about that. I can overrule the bureaucrats. Like if Gladys was a man, she might say to Darryl in this phone taps, you're a real ball breaker, because he's constantly pestering her about all these things.
And she does seem a wee bit like the victim here, doesn't she? The
well, she does sound like a stupid girl in love, that she did all this stuff and exercised poor judgment because she was in love with him. It was revealed this week that they're going to have a child together. Like, she comes across as like this teenage girl in love, eager to please him no matter how.
But then when running New South Wales, she comes across as just another fascist dictator who's implemented a vax mandate, and I have absolutely no sympathy for whatsoever.
Yes, I mean it was pretty brutal, the Sydney lockdown, particularly in Western Sydney. Gave Victoria's lockdown and dictator Dan a run for his money. For sure. That's not a nice thing to say. Okay. That could be taken out of context.
That could, all right. I withdraw, but not apologise.
Too late, you've already said it. It can be taken out of context. All right, we've gone over time tonight, so that's it for tonight. Thank you for everyone who watched on the Unshackled YouTube channel and the Mr. Berry channel, and we got Dewey to set it up on Odyssey as well. He'll be back with me next week. So what is it? I assume Auckland will still be in lockdown by then. They'll be up to day 80 by my calculation.
I have no doubt.
So I'll check in to see how he's going. I mean, he keeps himself busy at home with his wife Amy and the kids. There's lots to do to take his mind off the horrible government and lockdown.
Yeah, well, lucky for him, because all I do is fester over this.
All right, take care, Stephen.
Thank you
we
for
might
watching.
actually get to catch up in person in the next week or so.
I look forward to it.
All right, good night, everybody.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trad Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackles.net and rightminds.nz.